You actually were talking to a coach and you said that he asked you, why are you here? And you had two words to respond. What were those two
Mhm.
words?
Acceptance and rejection.
Mm, that's pretty loaded. So what
It is very loaded.
explain that to us. What does that mean for you?
So for me, unfortunately, I was put in a lot of situations where I wasn't always accepted and I was rejected. And so that goes from being in school to even growing up in my personal life via family, right? And so I figured that instead of me taking those situations and just, sometimes as a child, that's how childhood trauma begins.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the older I got, it was like, okay, you're going to take these situations and instead of allowing them to negatively impact you, you're going to do something about it. And so I always say that if I'm just touching one person or one life at a time, I know that I'm making a difference. And so my part of my purpose is to make sure that there's a sisterhood. There's a circle of women that's always around you and that's always supporting you with your dreams and your visions. And that I'm one of those people that I accept everybody because I know how it feels not to be accepted and to also be rejected.
Mm, mm. No, that's
Wow.
definitely good.
And that's so weird because acceptance and rejection, those are actually like polar opposites. So you're saying that those are the two things, as far as the question goes of why are you here, acceptance and rejection. And
Mhm.
when you think of the word sisterhood, you think about being accepted, right? And like you said, you've experienced a lot of rejection. Can you give us some examples of like in what ways were you rejected?
So I will start with school. Um, how can I say this? Kids can be cruel, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes they don't even realize that they are being cruel. And so growing up as a child, and it could, I know that it was a lot of things that caused it. It could be size, it could be skin color, it could be the way that I dressed. All of those different things. Now, I grew up in a two-parent household and I didn't want for anything, thank God. My mother always made sure that I was dressed. I look nice, but kids are just always going to be kids. And so it kind of started with that. I went through middle school like that. I went through high school. I didn't have a lot of friends in high school. I had a few. And still to this day, I can honestly say there's only one person that I still keep in contact with from high school. And at that point, we are literally brother and sister. And so we have a lot of things in common. And then unfortunately, it's just situations that I don't have control over when it comes to family. Um, it's unfortunate, but I'm at a point where it is what it is. I still respect you for who you are, but if that bond or that relationship is not there, I'm okay with that. And so when it came to family, it was a lot of times where you would see other people or children around me, they got better treatment than what I did. And so still to this day, there's been a couple of suggestions as to why it's happened. But in my mind, there's no excuse for that because here's the thing. Children don't ask to be brought here. Children can't control who their parents are. Um, all of those situations kind of play a factor to it. And so there's also been times where, I've had people tell me like, well, it's okay. Look where you at now. None of those things matter because when I was a child and then growing up into being a young woman that I am today, I was seeking love that you were giving everybody else, right? And so when you don't feel that, um, it'll have you feeling some kind of way, unfortunately. But I took all of those experiences again and I decided to do something about it. Um, and I formed Sisters Circle MKE.
Hmm.
Hmm. That is
Wow.
really interesting. because it's called Sister Circle. So I'm wondering, like, do you have sisters? Like, where, because I guess, let me backtrack. So are you talking about in regards to like when you talk about your family from your parents, like you didn't feel like you were getting the love you need?
No, it wasn't from my parents.
Okay.
It wasn't from my parents. It was from other relatives.
Okay, so other relatives. Okay, so then that brings me to, I'm wondering like what made you call it like Sister Circle based on those experiences that you had and not like family network or I don't know, something surrounding family. And that's why I'm wondering, do you have sisters? And do you think that, did you have some rejection towards other females? Like, you said you only had a few friends in high school. So your relationships with other women, what is that like?
So I don't have any sisters.
Okay.
I do have, and I thank God for them. I do have my I have some best friends, some female best friends. And at this point, we are definitely sisters. Our blood couldn't make us any closer. So I'm so thankful for them. But I think that going back to like childhood and high school and things like that, yes, it was more so young ladies who would do those things to me. And unfortunately, I felt uncomfortable for a long time. And so then also growing up, and it's like, I always had my mom for support, but you definitely want people around you who are the same age, right? And that's just how it should be, and it's more relatable. So although I have my best friends, I just always felt like you see other people, they have sisterhood around them, whether it's just people that they grew up with, whether it's sororities, whether it's, I don't know, church friends, all of those, you find ways to have sisterhood. And so I always felt like I didn't have that and it was out of my control. The thing about it is I feel like this is something that as a culture and as a community, I feel like we don't always talk about these things. Maybe those conversations do happen and I'm just not aware of that. But I definitely feel like sisterhood is something that we need to work on because we all should be uplifting each other. And all the time that doesn't happen.
No, I agree 100%. We talk about it here.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
You came to the right place. One of the things that I heard you say is, you witness people giving love to other people, but they wouldn't give it to you. So that made you feel rejected. And, that makes sense, right? Because when you see people treating other people a certain type of way, then they have the capability, right? But then it's like, well, then why won't you do that same thing for me, right? So clearly you can, right? But what's different? So what do you think was different about you, or what made you feel like why do you think they were treating you different?
So like I mentioned, it's been a couple of things that was suggested. And this is very unfortunate. It could be who my parents are. I've heard things like you're dark skinned and they only like light skinned people. I've heard things like, well, your parents always worked and took care of you and you don't need nothing from us. So because I've never asked directly, why did you treat me that way? I don't know. I can't answer for them. But those are just a couple of things that has always been suggested to me. And so I am a very observant person. And so when those suggestions were kind of given, to be honest, it makes a lot of sense.
That's so interesting you said that. And I'm glad we're kind of taking it here because I think this is a conversation.
Let's open the door, child.
We didn't open the door now because now I got some more questions. Because I do think that those are things that we don't talk about as Black people. And those things happen so often. I mean, you and I, we grew up in different houses, but I can relate to what you're saying right now. That has absolutely happened to me and my family where, they will say like, relatives will say things like, oh, you're so pretty to be dark skinned. And, you don't look like your mom, like, because my mom is lighter than I am. I mean, she's not like even that light, but she's just lighter than I am. So a mess. And I would get those things when I was younger, and I used to be like, bro, what? Why? Like, why are you treating me this way? Like, I didn't ask to be a part of this family, but here I am. Like, and it doesn't matter. And then and it makes you, and I don't know, Cassandra, if you felt the same way, but it makes you look at yourself a little differently. Like, is there something different about me? Is it me? Like, what is this? Because it was always brought up for me, at least in my family and in my house. And, and I think that is something that we don't talk about in the Black community and in Black families, that treating each other differently and what that can do to your self-esteem as you get older. So I can definitely relate to that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that we need to talk about, and we need to stop doing that as a community.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's not even in what you say, but it's in what you don't say. And I want to shout out Scarlett, who's in the chat, our bestie, and my soror Diamond, who's listening in, texting me.
Yay.
Hey y'all. Point. Hey y'all, we love y'all.
Yes.
And I was actually talking to Scarlett last night about this, and I was telling her, so my niece is getting ready to turn 4, and like she'll say different things like, oh, like TT Sherry is pretty or whatever, right? And obviously we always tell her that she's pretty, right? And she's lighter skinned. But I was telling Scarlett that I have to tell her that dark skinned little girls are pretty, because if she never hears me or anybody else refer to somebody darker as being pretty, it's sort of implied that they're not, right?
Absolutely.
So even though I could not mean any harm by not saying it or whatever, it's like you sort of have to be intentional about it, because they're listening, like kids are listening and they are sponges.
Yeah.
And my absence of acknowledging another child's beauty feeds in to the stereotype and perpetuates the idea that there is a standard of beauty.
Absolutely.
And that little dark girl doesn't belong in it.
Absolutely.
And it's so crazy, because it's like, it's the stuff like that happens, and it's like these little microaggressions, and everybody thinks that, oh, it's nothing. Like, I didn't say she was ugly. I didn't. Okay, but it's also in what you didn't do, and it's also in what you didn't say.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because we learn from experiences. We learn from what we see and what we hear. So all of those things, and even just saying like all these different shades are beautiful. Like, we're all beautiful together. Like, hearing those things, and then they grow up like, okay, we all are bad. Like we out here. But then when you don't get that or see that, or then you hear your relatives, like people who are supposed to love you, like kind of knock you down, like, oh, you cute but like.
Right.
Nah.
Or even the comparisons.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of Sarah Jakes, right, and Cora Jakes, and y'all know that they're sisters, and Scarlett and I were talking about this as well. So Cora was on this, she was on a trip with her husband. She lost a little weight.
Okay.
She was out here in these streets.
Yes.
And she told us, she said, look, y'all, this weekend you might get a little leg, you might get a little thigh, you might even get some tongue, because your girl is feeling herself.
Okay.
She was like, I got down to a large.
Love it.
I think
wow.
she was, I don't want to say what her weight was, because I don't remember, but she lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, she definitely looks good. Yeah.
A lot of work.
She looks great.
And she was like, and people were shaming her because she was on a beach, and she had on this skirt that showed a little bit of leg. And she was just like, y'all don't know what I had to go through to accept myself. Like, people gave me so much flack for my weight, for my skin. Like, I'm here with my husband.
Right.
I've accepted myself. Y'all gonna get this leg, and guess what? If you don't like it, unfollow.
Please. Listen. Yes, Cora. I love that. Shout out to her. That's what's up.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I was gonna say that when we were talking about like things that happen in your childhood, that goes back to, so I don't have any kids, but I do have goddaughters, and I do have nieces, and I have a nephew. But if I did have kids, that goes back to like parents, because so many things are done to children, right? And some kids are just not as vocal, so then you have to pull it out of them. But we need to start speaking affirmations to our kids. And I say that because when you were just talking about your niece, we need to start affirming those things within our kids, so that when they get to our age or older, when they're a teenager, stuff that should have bothered them, it won't bother them, because we've planted affirmation within them. right? And so I just encourage any parents or grandparents, whoever, anybody who's listening, and you have kids, if you are not doing that, start doing, I don't care, daily affirmations with your kids. Repeat after me. You are smart. You are beautiful. You are brown, but that's okay. Whatever you want your affirmation to be, start doing that with your kids. I promise you, it will make a difference.
Yeah,
It will.
I agree. And you know what? Shouts out to Brittany.
I was just about to say that.
Because she has a beautiful daughter,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna get the song wrong, child. But the lyrics to the song, it says something like, "Who's the prettiest girl in the whole wide world? Ava,
Mhm.
Ava Marie, the amazing Ava Marie." You know,
Yes.
something to that effect. And I was like, that is just so amazing to get that in her subconscious.
Yeah, and she's gonna forever, like, that is all going to materialize for her. And when you said that I immediately thought of Brittany as well. I think her and her husband do a wonderful job of affirming their little baby. She is everything. And then she can communicate those affirmations back to you, which is amazing.
And
So
kids, you know, kids will just sing it. Because, you know, if that's in her subconscious, she'll just sing that.
Exactly.
So then somebody try to come call her ugly.
She gonna be like, oh,
She
no.
gonna be like, oh no.
Oh,
I'm a lot
yeah.
of things, honey. Ugly's not one.
Listen, my mom and my daddy said, like, no. So yes, that is very true.
I agree. And it does take you being intentional because, you know, kids hear no so much.
Mhm.
They hear stop so much. They hear what they not. You talk too much. You're too this. You're too, like, you know, I agree. Like those positive affirmations. And also to your point, us women, we need to do that to each other, right? So that's sort of the whole point of us starting off with a toast.
Yeah.
Like, who are you going to acknowledge? Who are you going to shout out today?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's something that you have to be intentional about doing because our culture does not naturally do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? We don't gravitate all the time to those sort of things. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely something that needs to start taking place.
It sure does. And, you know, I think we get there, you know, there's all these women empowerment things that's happening right now, but are you really intentional and genuine about the empowering of other women? And not just Black women, but all women. Like, are all women empowering one another? So I think you are in the right lane with Sister Circle and what that could be of empowering women. So,
and you know that kind of goes into making sure that you know your purpose and your calling. Because when you know your purpose and your calling, and so when you think about like calling, you think of assignment. Where has God placed me at? Where has He planted me at? And here's the thing, when you know that you are walking in your purpose and you are fulfilling your calling, you'll never get tired of it, right? It's something that you're always going to want to do, and it'll never feel like work to you. So this is something that will forever be near and dear to my heart because of my experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
I love it. And you know what I love is that you're trying to do it for real because right now it's very trendy.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You see the hashtags like my bestie was saying, and I gotta shout out my Sora Diamond because, and I mentioned this on I think the last episode, but we're launching Black skirts and briefcases, and that the whole idea behind that, and it's really her brainchild, but the whole idea was that she's like, people say they support each other, but it's not for real. You know, like we need to do it for real. Like we need to create a community where we have a network of women where we know who to recommend, who to promote, who to go to. And when they launch a business, like let's have a business shower. Like let's stop saying that we're supporting.
Yeah.
And actually support.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And when you actually support, that means you're showing up.
Yeah.
That means you're investing. That means I'm supporting you behind your back.
Yeah. And not just because it's a popularity thing, like I'm gonna support you because it's hot or it's popping or something. I don't know. But I feel like that happens a lot. Like people want to support you because of popularity, not versus just because that's the right thing to do. Like we should be supporting each other.
Right.
Right. Or they wait to see how you gonna do first.
Yeah. Right.
And then once you become successful and you have it all figured out, that's when people start popping up. Well, I know her. I always knew you was gonna do that.
I swear, I always knew you had it in you. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But hey, that is how it's been. So I'm thankful for businesses like Sister Circle and like your soror's business and your business, because
blackskirtsandbriefcases.com.
Black Skirts and Briefcases,
where
yes.
you can register your business.
Yes, where you can register your business. And I definitely, I think those are important because we do need to support that. And I feel like we always use all these other like search engines. We're like, oh, well, I wish I knew X, Y, and Z. And then all of those things could be right in one spot. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's wonderful.
And you know what, so Chanel, before you were talking about Cassandra using the word sisterhood, but then I'm also looking at, she said bridging sisters, right?
Yeah.
So that implies that there's a heck of a gap there.
Yeah.
You know
That's
what
it is. That's literally that's exactly what it is. There's, we've been talking about how we don't always support each other. We say we're going to come through and then we don't. And so when you think about it, it is a bridge between actually doing those things and supporting. And so that's exactly how Bridging Sisters came along. I always tell people that it's okay to have like your close group of, friends that we going through everything together. But sometimes when you think about it, you can also limit yourself, right? You can miss out on opportunities. Now you always gonna have your top 5 or whoever that's always going to be there for you. But I've even realized that sometimes you kind of have to step out of those elements, because I could be missing my blessing. I could be missing somebody else who's going to really come in and support me. I could be missing somebody who's going to lead the way, help me lead the way. So I always want to make sure that that line of communication is always open, because there is a gap between sisterhood, and it's unfortunate. But again, I just have to be one of those people who constantly support and promote that.
Absolutely. And thank God for you. And thank God for you being obedient to your purpose. And you know, it's so crazy because we, like you said, there's tons of sororities, right? There's all these groups. There's a lot of Facebook groups. And I kind of mentioned this on another episode where the amount of people in these Facebook groups are of like Black women looking for friends, right? They're called all different types of things, but that lets me know that at our core, we want it, but we just may not know how to do it. Because one of the things that you said, you were like, well, some people could look at me and say, okay, well, I have a 2-parent household. You don't need nothing. You don't want nothing, whatever. But why not look at that and say, like, appreciate that about you? Right. And I'm going to pick on my Sora Diamond again, right? Like, she has a lot of great things going on. And sometimes people can look at different things and kind of, you know, dismiss you because of it and say like, oh, she thinks she all that. Right. But it's one of those things where it's like, dude, appreciate that about her, because she can add to you. So take the best part of her, like Jay-Z said, right? You take the best part of rock and the best part of hip hop, and that's how you have an amazing collaboration.
Listen here.
I'm taking the best at what I do and the best at what you do, and we're putting it together.
And if those are something that you aspire to, ask the question, like, how did you get these things? Or, you know, what was it like? Like, teach me so that I can be better. Don't look at it as this is your competition or this is a negative because they have X, Y, and Z, but ask some questions so that you can get some understanding.
You know, I saw this post and it said surveillance is not the same as support.
That is good.
That is good.
That's a good
I
one.
saw another post that said, you know, I posted something and I only got 3 likes, but then I put it in my story and I got over 100 views. And that let me know that people aren't liking, but they're definitely watching.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right. And it's like, what's that about?
I have no idea. And it's funny because I do that too. Like, I very rarely post on anything, but I'll post in my stories and people are watching. Like, people just want to see what you're doing. And it's odd. I mean, that's the world we live in. People want things quick and they don't want, I don't know, it takes like 2 seconds to push the thing, but it's much faster to just watch. I don't have to do anything with that.
And then you will run into people, they're like, I seen what you put on Facebook, you know, you doing something. It's like, like you said, okay, you viewed it, but you didn't say anything. Like, that's kind of weird to me. But, you know, it's just, it's one of those things. But going back to what you had said about like, it made me think of, if I have something going for myself and if someone asks questions like, how did you get here? Or, how did you start all of this up? I don't mind sharing my knowledge, my wealth, because it's going to help somebody else. But also, like, I'm learning that you always want to keep people around you that essentially are above you, if that makes sense, because they're role models. Okay, I'm right here, but this person is up there, and I know if I keep that person around me, they are showing me the way, and so I have the potential to be just as great as they are. And I was actually talking to a friend about that. We were talking about that in a way of like spirituality, right? And so she often commends me, and I tell her, I'm like, listen, I'm not the perfect Christian. We all have our flaws. I could read my Bible more. I'm just being honest. I could pray more. Um, it's so many things that I could do. And I complimented her and I told her, I'm like, no, you don't understand that you actually encourage me because you're farther in your walk. And so you challenge me on that level to be greater than what I am now. And so I think it's so important to kind of keep, and that's part of Sister Circle, keep people around you that are like-minded. We're all trying to go on the same direction. And it's people, in Sister Circle, they're like, well, I'm in the discovery stage of my purpose. I don't know where I'm at. It's just all chaotic right now. And I was like, welcome to Sister Circle. It's like, we're gonna help you figure this thing out. You're not alone. So
yeah, and I agree. I don't think you necessarily have to be at the same pace, right? Because some people are going to move slower, some people are going to move faster, and it'll be in different areas. There's some things that Chanel might think I'm better at her at, and that's fine. And then there's some things where I'm like, girl, but I know you better at this other thing. You know what I mean? And that's how we complement each other. But to your point, you do have to be going in the same direction, because if you're not, then now it becomes a distraction. Right. So now you're distracting me from my purpose.
But sometimes distractions is really what you need. And I say that because I felt like I was a little bit distracted. And so I had things that was going on where now when I look back on it, I'm like, man, if I wouldn't have been distracted, how much farther along would Sister Circle have been? And so it took that distraction to exit. And so then I started figuring everything out. And so it's unfortunate to have distractions, but no, thank you for that distraction, because guess what? You just pushed me into my purpose. You just pushed me into my calling, and you don't even realize that I needed that distraction. And that goes to the point. There's a scripture that kind of talks about like, there's never going to be the perfect conditions, because if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never get anything done. And so it's okay to kind of be like, well, I'm gonna sit around for a minute, or I'll kind of just ride this thing out. But at the same time, you have to release those things and push forward to ultimately what you know that you're being called to do.
Right. I agree. Everything in its own time, right? So like you said, you can be distracted, but only for so long. And then it'll cause you to release it and say, all right, now I'm clear.
Absolutely. And that's another positive way to look at it, to say, okay, well, I'm grateful for those distractions, because then it made me like reset to say, okay, let me keep pushing forward to do what I got to do what I'm called to do.
You know what? So DMX just passed away, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Shout out to Earl.
Man, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. And one of the things that he said, there was a clip where he was on Dr. Phil, and he said that Dr. Phil was saying like, you had 7 albums, and in each one you did a song where you were acknowledging God, but there were 3 songs where you were having conversation with the devil. And he said, I'm not saying I rode with the devil. I'm not saying I, wanted to be like him, but I did have conversations with him because I got to know him to be able to recognize him. That way I can see snakes. Right. And I was like, right. Because that, like you said, it could be a distraction, but now if I can identify you, now I'm that much better because I'm not going to fall for the trickery.
That was good. That's a good example. And shout out to him. I was listening to DMX earlier, and Damien was one of them songs where he was having a conversation with the devil. So yeah, that's what's up. And that is true, because like you said, I can identify it, and now you're not gonna trick me, you're not gonna set me up, I'm not gonna fall for the okie doke because I know you.
And now I can warn the masses.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I love that. That's very profound. Shout out to him. Rest in peace. I miss that guy. But yeah. So I want to know, like, tell us a little bit more and tell our listeners a little bit more about Sister Circle. Like, what's the goal that you have in mind for Sister Circle, and what stages is Sister Circle in currently?
So Sister Circle is in the, I would say, the beginning stages. I did launch, but I can say that it's an ongoing process.
Wait,
so
back up, time out. You launched it already?
Yeah, so maybe about a month or two ago.
Okay, you ain't gonna over. She was like, but like, that's huge. Congratulations. Yes, that's what's up. Okay, so you launched it last month. Congratulations.
So the book club is up and running. I tried to make sure with the book club that we read books that everyone can find similarities in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, we might talk about purpose for 1 month. We might talk about relationships. We might, the goal within the next month is to talk about parenting. I try to make sure that all these different aspects are being talked about. And so the book club really became an idea because throughout the pandemic, especially in the early stages of the pandemic, we didn't have nothing to do. Like, it was really go to the grocery store and come back home. Like, it was
every
nothing
day.
And so after grad school, I got out of the habit of reading. Like, if it was not work related, I'm not reading. And so I told that was like a thing that I had, a personal goal, is you need to start getting back in the habit of reading. You need to start exercising your brain, because you're not doing that and you're getting lazy. And so I went around and I asked a couple ladies, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a book club. Would you like to join? They're like, sure. And so really the purpose of the book club was also to have self-care moments, because a lot of the ladies in there, they're wives, they're mothers, they have jobs. So you just don't have a lot of time for self-care. And so I also wanted it to be a spot where we could have, because think about all the books that we read, and it's so many different topics. That's when you begin to have diverse conversations. Mm-hmm. And so that was really how the book club started. I haven't started my official practice for life coaching, but I did complete my certification. So I do have that now. And I think with life coaching, I really want to focus on those who are trying to find their purpose and those who are trying to fulfill their lives, essentially. So that's kind of what I'm doing with the life coaching. Like I said, I haven't started my practice yet, but that will be in the near future. And then we already kind of talked about the Bridging Sisters, which is essentially to kind of bridge the gap between sisterhood and have us come together. I also wanted it to be networking as well, because there's so many women in the group where, whether it's career-wise, whether it's establishing some personal goals, we all can kind of feed off of each other and learn something from each other. So that's essentially where I am at with that. Like I said, it's in the beginning stages, but I'm proud of how far I've came within just these past few months. And Sister Circle, it's going to be an ongoing process. I'm going to always find new ways to implement things that definitely continues to attract those who might be interested and those who are already participating. And I definitely want to be known in the community for serving others. It's not always going to be about us, but we are also going to give back.
I love that.
That's good.
So what do you think we as women, what do we need to unlearn to really have sisterhood?
what do we need to unlearn? A lot of it is our ways, how we treat people, how we approach people, how we view people before getting to know them, right? Um, because there's so many times where it's a lot of he say, she say that happens. And so ultimately you can miss out on a good person because, oh, well, such and such said that about them, so I'm not going to get to know them. And so here's my thing with that. I'm always one of those people where you can peep me on somebody, but here's the thing. Thank you for telling me. But I am one of those people now where I want to get to know that person for myself. And if it happens that what you told me is true, well, then so be it. Now I know how to handle that situation. Now I know how to deal with that person. But I always want to get to know a person for myself because here's the thing. What didn't work for you, that doesn't mean that it's not going to work for me. And so if I go off of everything that you said, I could be missing out on a wonderful person. And I'm not going to limit myself like that. And I don't think us as Black women and also sisters, stop limiting yourself because you never know who you might come in contact with, and that person can change your life.
Mm-hmm. That was very well said. And just to add on to that, I definitely think something we can unlearn is that there's opportunity for us all. Like we can all win. I think that, a lot of people think that there's a ceiling to this, like you gotta stop. But that's not true. I mean, if we didn't learn nothing in quarantine, like people made so many boss moves during the whole pandemic. And that lets me know that there is opportunity out there for everybody. And not just a certain group of people, not just, white women or Black women, but just everybody. There's opportunity and there is a lane for you. So I think once we unlearn that only I can win, that I think
or only I can win first.
Only I can win first. Absolutely. I think we will be so much better off.
Right. Yeah. I also think it's about projection, like, oh, she thinks she's cute. No, honey, you think she's cute. Right. Oh, she thinks she all that. No, boo, you think she's all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She thinks she's smart. No, honey, she must be because you think she's smart.
And that is so true. And that makes me think about when Cassandra was talking about like kids being cruel. And I think we project our own insecurities on other people because it's easy for me to push it on you versus dealing with it myself. And I think a lot of children go through that too, but they don't understand that I need to do some self-work because they just kids. But that's really what it is.
But they are repeating what they've learned.
Absolutely.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, why wouldn't that same kid run up to that little girl and say, I like your hair? Mm-hmm. Not she thinks she's cute.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because they learned that,
Because they had to learn it from somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I love that. I'm excited for everything that's to come. I think that's great.
Yeah. So how do people get involved with Sister Circle?
So you can follow us on Facebook at Sisters Circle MKE. You can also send an email, and that's sistercirclemke@yahoo.com. And so you can send us a message and express that you are interested, and I will definitely get back to you.
Oh, that's awesome. I have a question for you. What book are you all reading? Like, what was like the last book that you all read, or what's like currently coming up?
So the last book that we read we're in April now. So the last book that we read was from a local author, Tanine Rucker. It's called Her Journey.
Okay.
So we read that book, and then for April, our book is Michael Todd, Relationship Goals.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we also read Relationship
Goals. We did read Relationship Goals.
Big fans of Michael Todd.
Big fans. Yes. That's going to be a great conversation. Yes, really great conversation.
It is.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because there's so much that we can learn from other women. Mm-hmm. Like, oh my God.
Yes, because you'll find that you have some similarities, and especially as Black women, we have like shared like experiences. But then you look into people and you notice like, wow, like I didn't think of it like that, or I've never experienced that. And I think that's the beauty of just collaboration. I'm a huge big fan of collaboration. Like, I think it's great.
Big fan.
Big fan of collaboration.
And, I'm a big fan of collaboration and reading, because
Yeah.
with reading, then it allows you to expand your perspective, because a lot of times you have a baseline of how you see things, and then you read something, you get more insight, then you get the feedback from the other women that you read with, and you're like, oh, you took it like this, I didn't even consider it that way.
That's good. That is very true.
It's reading will open your mind. That's what I love about it.
It will.
It sure will. Reading rainbows.
You can't lead if you can't read. Look, here comes all those quotes about reading.
That is true. Take a look.
Oh my God. What is wrong with us?
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Okay.
I love it.
Absolutely. So we are getting close to the to-go box. So tell us, what are we taking away from this episode?
We're starting with me.
We'll
yes.
start with
okay,
you.
because I was about to start talking. I'm sorry, but no, I'm definitely taking away the power of sisterhood. And like Cassandra and you mentioned, Sherry Renee, that we've been in groups. We have our friend group. We're in sororities, so we have like an understanding of what sisterhood is. But I'm gonna be honest, for me, like even now, like I still sometimes struggle with sisterhood just because of my past experiences with my own biological sister. Like it hasn't always been good. So I'm still trying to navigate and understand like what being sisterly means for me and what that looks like, based off of the experiences that I've had in my past, but just trying to rework, like everybody is not like this person, and you have to extend people grace and all of those things and what that looks like. So I think having a place where women can go, such as Sister Circle, and being a part of that is a great way to build up on what it means to be sisterly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with that. And those women will have the intention, right, to want that sisterhood. So they'll be willing to work towards it. So what is your takeaway, Cassandra?
So I would say that my takeaway would be to embrace your challenges, right? To embrace those obstacles. Some form or some fashion, we all go through them. But it's about what we do with that, how those experiences actually make us, mold us, and form us. So everything that we go through, even when it's painful, there's always purpose behind it.
Amen.
That was a word.
It's a whole word. You can cash app her.
Yeah.
I'm just playing.
Ooh, I'm like, that was a word. Yes.
That was a word. You know what? Like, we didn't really go too deep, but you did talk about a lot of things, right? Like colorism, right? Just being treated differently. People judging you because of your weight. You know what I mean? Or the fact that they might perceive that you have a better family situation than them. Right. So like all these things that make us different, but they really make us unique. Right. And if you respect each other's differences and you actually optimize them, then collaboration is key. And one thing that I love about women is that we are naturally multipliers. Right. Like I think that is a gift that women have. So when we come together, if we are on purpose, if we are aligned, and if we are intentional, I know that we can do great, amazing things. But, unfortunately, when we're not, then it becomes all those things that we talked about earlier, right? All the hurt and the pain and the judgment and all that other stuff. But so I would just challenge us to try to be better, right? We don't have to be perfect, but let's just try to be better. And let's try to be intentional. Because like I said, with my niece, with her being 4, like realizing that sometimes it's not even what you say or what you do, but it's what you don't say. It's what you don't do. Because we all want to put all this energy into her and make sure that she knows that she's beautiful, but we don't want her to think that she's the only beautiful, what I mean? Or that her beauty is it, like you want to be able to allow her to see other people and acknowledge their beauty and their gifts and their talents and respect them, right? And not poke fun at something because that other child might be different. They can have a different hair color or, you know, whatever. And that, because I also, you know, she also has red hair.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So cute.
right. And so just being intentional about that, man. Like we do. Like we have a responsibility. We are grown adult women now. We can't keep saying we didn't know.
Exactly.
You know what it is.
And you didn't even seek to understand.
Right.
So that's that part too.
No excuses no
Yeah,
more.
no.
We're gonna be accountable in the 2021.
Gotta be.
And we're gonna do better.
Got to be. Yes. I
All
love
right.
it.
So tell us one more time, how can we connect with you on social media and via email?
So you can follow us on Facebook at Sisters Circle MKE. And you can also send us an email, and that's sistercirclemke@yahoo.com.
Well,
Yes.
thanks for tuning in to Brunch with Bessie's podcast. Until next time.
Peace.